Good afternoon and welcome to ProControl University. My name is Clint Forberg, Director of Training for ProControl, and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today's class is Programming with ProControl Studio Part 2. Joining me on the keyboard is Matt Sundberg, Technical Support Specialist for ProControl, and he's going to be answering your questions in the chat window if you choose to post them on there. Any questions that you post in the chat window, I'll be sure to answer as well if they are pertinent to what we're talking about, so please feel free as we go through this. If you have questions, go ahead and post them in the Q&A panel, and either Matt or myself will be willing and able to answer those for you as we go along. Today's class is going to be a continuation of where we left off yesterday. In the first part of programming in ProControl Studio, we went through the basics of ProControl Studio and also demonstrated how quick and easy it is to program a control system using ProControl Studio. Specifically, we programmed a Pro24R remote control and a ProLink-R processor, a one-way control system. In today's class, we're going to kind of expand on where we went from yesterday, in that we're going to start talking about the Z-Series product, the Pro24Z remote control, the ProLink-Z central control processor. We're going to spend some time talking about using RS-232 to control the equipment in our audio, video, lighting, HVAC, security, all the subsystems in our project. We're going to discuss using that RS-232 library. We'll also talk a little bit about adding a command natively into a macro if it's not available in the library. We're also going to spend some time talking about drivers. Drivers are what allow the ProControl system to have bidirectional, two-way communication with the equipment in our projects, both hardware-related applications and sometimes non-hardware-related applications. I'll spend a little bit of time talking about the differences in there. We're going to talk a little bit about the auto-programming template pages that come with the drivers and how to edit those as necessary. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how to apply two-way feedback and control to our devices, even outside the boundaries of the pre-built templates. Talk about variables, adding button text, adding commands, two-way graphics like toggle buttons, sliders, weather graphics, all kinds of interesting things built into ProControl Studio, and you're going to see how quick and easy it is for you as the integrator to incorporate these features into the control systems that you design for your client and still remain that easy-to-use, speedy programming interface that ProControl Studio provides for us. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the macro steps that are in the ProControl Studio, how to implement some of these advanced macro features that we didn't cover yesterday. And we're also going to spend a little bit of time talking about IR learning. We had a number of questions yesterday about learning IR commands into ProControl Studio, so I'm going to demonstrate that for you and show it how easy it is for you to use. As always, we're recording this event. It'll be posted on the ProControl website, available for you to download tomorrow. If you weren't able to join us for the first 2 days of our presentations on Monday and Tuesday, those videos have been recorded and posted under the training materials section at the ProControl dealer website. Again, to access that website, you need to register. So you log in with your credentials, register your name, your company information, and then you'll have full access to all the materials available on ProControl Studio. Again, as we're going through this, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A panel, and either Matt will answer them on the keyboard, or I'll read them out loud if they're pertinent to what we're talking about. Unfortunately, I'm going to keep the mics muted as we have so many attendees here today. It'd get to be fairly cumbersome. So go ahead and feel free to post those questions, and I'll do my very best to answer them for you as we go along. Now, on the screen right now, you're seeing a system file that I've pre-created before we went ahead. There's nothing on here that we didn't cover yesterday. Building a system file using ProControl Studio. In this case, you'll see that I've added a couple of ProControl devices. We added a Pro24Z remote control and a ProLink-Z processor, and that was implemented exactly the same way we added the R devices in our system file yesterday. And I've got a number of controlled devices added, and as you can see, they're all infrared devices. Now, when we're using RS-232 to control a system, which we have the ability to do with the Pro24Z processor, it's going to be done in a similar fashion. We're going to go to the Controlled Devices section in ProControl Studio, and again, click on the green Add button to add those devices. Unlike the the ProLink-R processor, you'll see that RS-232 is now available. It's no longer grayed out. Also, driver. To add one of these devices, and again, the RS-232 port is an RJ45 on that ProLink processor, and it includes a pinout to adapt it to a DB9, so you can plug it into the back of that lighting control, that receiver, that projector, whatever it is that you're trying to control. To add a device, I'm going to choose RS-232 device, and this will open the master RS-232 library built into ProControl Studio. We can scroll down and find the device we'd like to add, or we can use the search feature at the top of the library to type in what we're choosing. I want to find a TV in here, so I'm going to start typing in the brand, Panasonic, and again, you can see it drills down through the library, and I can find the device I'm looking for, my Panasonic Plasma TV. I'm going to go ahead and click on it from the library, and it's going to ask me what would I like to call that device. Do I just want to call it Plasma? That's the default name. I can even change that to reflect what I'd like the name of the device to be. It could be the master bedroom TV, the living room TV, the theater, however you'd like to do it. It's also going to prompt us and ask if we'd like to add a page for that device. In this case, I'm not going to because we already have a cable box in here. Click OK, and that controlled device has been added to the controlled devices section within ProControl Studio. As always, when we add a control device, we want to confirm that the configuration properties are set up properly. So we're going to go over to the right-hand side of ProControl Studio, select which port that TV in this case is going to be plugged into. Got a couple of ports on here, RTI dock, AV receiver. Probably should have had one for TV, beg your pardon. We'll just plug it into that one, the desired port. Baud rate, parity, data bits, and stop bits are already populated in by the RS-232 library. So you don't have to be digging through the documentation. You don't have to be typing in strings. We simply add it from the library. Now we have pre-tested, pre-configured strings with all the protocol information attached directly to that device. So it's really as simple as that to add a controlled device using RS-232 to our system. Let's talk a little bit about drivers. Drivers are how the ProControl system implements bidirectional functionality, two-way control. Not only controlling that device, again, via RS-232, or it could be TCP/IP, an Ethernet protocol, to control that device, receive feedback from that device. Adding a driver-controlled device is as simple as IR or RS-232. Again, I'm going to click on that green plus sign, the Add button. This time I'm going to choose Driver. This opens in the built-in driver database, and this is updated with every version of the software. So you're going to see more and more drivers becoming available for that ProLink Z processor. So I'm going to go through here and add a couple of drivers. First one I'm going to add, RTI dock. That's RTI's iPod dock. That's rack mountable. So we can use that to get two-way control of our iPod Touch, iPod Classic, iPod Nano, whatever your customer happens to have. I'm going to highlight it in my list, and I'm going to go ahead and select Open. When I add it, it's going to show me a proposed page. It's going to give me a template for that driver-controlled device. So what you're going to find is when you're using these drivers in ProControl Studio, it's going to automatically prompt you to add these template pages that are already completely programmed, not only to control that device, but to receive feedback from those devices as well. Great question in the chat window. Can you use RTI drivers with the ProControl system? You cannot, but they're very similar in construction. So you'll see a lot of drivers that are available for the RTI control system, especially the simpler ones. I don't know if you're going to see a Kaleidoscape driver necessarily for ProControl, but you're going to see a lot of those drivers adapted for use with the ProControl system. So if you're an RTI dealer, you have a pretty good idea of what's coming down the pike regarding drivers for ProControl as well. Excellent question. Thanks for asking it. And again, if anyone has questions, please feel free to post them in the Q&A panel, and either Matt or myself will be sure to answer them for you. All right, back to where we were working. We added the driver for our RTI dock, and it proposed to add a page, the RTI dock page, pre-programmed. So let's go ahead and add that. Very simple to do. And again, we need to set up the properties for that particular driver that we've added. We're going to go over here to the right-hand side. Now it's going to ask me, okay, how do you want the ProLink Z processor to control that RTI dock in this case? We can choose either network control, if we have it on the Ethernet network along with the processor, or we can choose a serial port. It's completely up to you. So if you don't want to run a dedicated cable to the device, go ahead and throw both on the network, and you can use TCP/IP to control those devices. We are going to choose serial port in this case and tell it which one we want to use, the RTI dock port in this case. If I had chosen to use TCP/IP, I could enter in the static IP address of my RTI dock right here, and we'll set up all those configuration properties. Another great question in the chat window. The RTI IR and serial library will import might not auto-populate the remote buttons, but they do seem to work. That's exactly right. The format used for the ProControl libraries, command libraries, both IR and RS-232 will work with ProControl. So if you've been copying and pasting in those RS-232 commands, if you're an RTI dealer, or learning in those IR commands, they will work in ProControl Studio as well. So great point. Thanks for bringing it up. Let's go ahead and keep on. So we've added a driver. This is for our RTI dock. We're using serial to control this. Let's add another one. I'm going to go to Add, Driver. Now, let's say that we have an AV receiver on the network. So I'm going to pull down and choose one of the AV receivers from here. I'll use the Yamaha Avantage receiver in this case. I'm going to highlight it, hit Open, and now it again shows me some recommended pages that I can add to my system. Now I can go through and check which features I'm going to be using for my client's system. I'm going to add a AM/FM radio page. Well, let's add a Yamaha one. Let's go ahead and put in internet radio, Pandora, and satellite radio. So you can choose which pages you want, and again, you can click on one of those pages to see a preview of what it's going to look at. And remember, despite the fact that this is a template page, you as the integrator fully have the ability to customize the appearance of it. If you want to change the font, make the text larger, change the color, change the location, you're welcome to do so. It's easy to do. All right, so let's click OK. And again, we're going to set up the configuration properties for that device. Am I using a serial port? Am I using TCP/IP? So I can go in, choose. In this case, I'll choose TCP/IP. Choose TCP, put in the static IP address of the AV receiver here in the configuration properties, and that's something we can get from the on-screen display from the Yamaha receiver or from the front panel display. Or again, if we're choosing a serial port, we'll choose one of the two bidirectional serial ports available on the ProLink Z processor. All right, those are both examples of hardware-related drivers. Our processor is communicating with a black box of some type. It's an iPod dock. It's an AV receiver. But they're hardware-related. Whether you're using RS-232 or TCP/IP is irrelevant. We're talking to a specific piece of hardware that's in our system. There are also non-hardware-related drivers. And a good example of that is the weather driver that comes in ProControl Studio. I'm going to click the Add button, choose Driver, and now I'm going to grab the weather driver in here. When I select the weather driver, it's going to again prompt me to add that page. I'm going to do so by clicking OK. In the configuration properties, very simple. We need to tell it where it lives. Where do we want the weather, current conditions, weather forecast, where do we want all that information from? So we'll type in our local zip code, 90210. Not where I'm actually located, but you get the idea. You can type in that zip code. How do you want that information displayed? Imperial or metric? Do you want Fahrenheit? Do you want Celsius? Do you want miles per hour? Do you want kilometers per hour? Here's where you can set up that information. Update rate. How often do I want to go online? In order for this to work, our ProLink Z processor has to have an active internet connection. It has to be able, to go online and retrieve information from an XML feed. And this is a free feature, costs you nothing, but again, it's a great feature for your clients so they can see right on their handheld controller the current conditions, a forecast, wind speed, humidity, all kinds of different information that's available in there that I will show you when we start programming using the system. Question, will it work with Canadian postal codes? It will. I can put in a zip code in the US. I can put in a postal code. I can put in city, state, Toronto, Canada. I can put in Paris, France. I can put in all kinds of different information in there, and it will work and it will retrieve that data. All right, so now we've added several drivers into our devices. Let's see the pages that were placed on here by ProControl Studio when we added those drivers. Remember, there's a powerful auto-population feature built into ProControl Studio, so we don't have to be building these pages from scratch or populating with commands and variables. It's already been done for us, so a lot of powerful features in this software. I'm going to go to my ProControl Devices section, and I'm going to highlight my remote control, click Edit. I can also double-click on the remote control to bring it to its Edit window. Now that we've done so, let's take a look at our home page. You can see it's been auto-populated with a lot of these source or activity icons on here. An iPod button, cable TV, AM/FM radio, Sirius satellite radio, Pandora, internet radio, a weather button has been added. So all that work has been done for us automatically. It's a very, very easy process. All right, so now let's go in and let's take a look at some of these pages that we were given from the device. Let's go to our pull down here at the top and choose which one we want to use. I'm going to go to the RTI dock first of all. So I'll pull down to the RTI dock page that was added. And again, you can see it's given us a pre-programmed page. It's already done for us. It shows us the name of the track, the artist, the album, the iPod that's playing, shuffle and repeat. All that information has already been populated for us. And you'll notice up here at the top, there's two screens available. This is screen 1 of 2. So I'm going to click on the arrow, and that shows me I have a browsing screen as well. So I can have an item list object on there so I can scroll through lists of artists, albums, tracks, playlists, and I can touch exactly what I want to listen to. So again, powerful features, but still completely customizable. If I go back to my main screen here, I can look at this and say, okay, this looks pretty good, but you know what? I want the artist to be in a different color. I don't like this green color, so let's go ahead and change the properties. We'll go over to the right-hand side, hit Properties, and we can find our text color. So I can go in and modify it as I see fit. I can choose a different color from the library. You know what? I want to make this, I don't know, how about light blue? And you know what else? I want to make it a little bit larger, make it 14-point type. Do I want it bold? Yes. No. I can choose exactly what I want it to look like. I can even change fonts on the Pro 24Z. This is Arial. Let's go ahead and make it Tahoma. So you have a lot of flexibility in customizing the appearance of this. I can grab this button, I can drag it anywhere on my screen that I want to put it. You have complete autonomy as the programmer to put it exactly where you want in here. So easy to customize, simple to do. Another feature we have on this, text wrapping. You'll notice a wrapping section here under the button text properties. This allows us, if we have information that's larger than will fit on the window of the screen, I can either have it appear normal, as you see here, it just shows what fits on the button, but I can also go through and choose a number of different options. I can display it as a single line with ellipses, dot, dot, dot. That goes at the end telling you, hey, there's more information that will actually fit in this software. Multiple lines with ellipses, or we can have this text scroll across the screen. Slow, fast, side to side, nonstop, slow, fast, anything that you need it to do. Great question in the chat window. Is there an undo button in case you nudge something accidentally? There is. You'll see at the top features there's an undo and a redo button at the top of Pro Control Studio. And you can also use Control-Z and Control-Y just like you can in any Windows program. So again, very simple to modify these pages even though they're completely pre-built for you. Let's look at some of the other pages that have been included in here for us. This is the RTI dock. How about our AM/FM radio page? Here I've got a set of presets on here. That's great. I think I also have one for the Yamaha receiver that's been added. Here we go, Yamaha AM/FM receiver. Here's one that shows us some two-way feedback. Since we have a bidirectional device, we added that driver. The Yamaha's AM/FM receiver page shows us tuner frequency, band, some other various information that's in there. So that's a nice way to easily add bidirectional feedback on there. But we can add it anywhere that we want. So let's say that we have this page that has presets like I had up here. Here's just my presets. Maybe instead of saying AM/FM radio up here, I want to see the currently playing station. We can do that by adding a text variable to any button on the Pro Control controller. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to go into Properties. Where it says AM/FM radio, that's obviously button text. So we go to the button text section, text, and here it says AM/FM radio. That's what the button says on there. Maybe rather than saying AM/FM radio, I want to show the station that's playing. So I'm going to delete the text that's in that button. When I'm on the text entry field, you'll notice on the right-hand side there's an arrow. When I click on that, it provides a pull-down. This pull-down allows me to access all of the drivers that have been installed in my processor and get any kind of text feedback that I'd like to see. So I'm going to choose the driver, my Yamaha Avantage receiver. Gives me another pull-down. What do you want to get from it? I want to get some tuner information. So I'll put my cursor on tuner, and it populates all the information that I can get. Which preset are we using? So I can pull up and say, you know what? I want to see the tuner frequency on this button. So I'm going to choose frequency. Click on it. Puts VAR in that text box. That VAR indicates there's a variable. This is metadata. This is feedback from the device that we are controlling, that we subscribe to that variable. Now when I go back to my window, you can see that it's placing tuner frequency in there. It says 1500, and that's simply text. That's placeholder, so I can get my color, my font, my size right. It's already in there. What if I want to say 1500 AM, 92.5 FM? We can put multiple text variables in a field. I'm simply going to go into my text window. I'll hit my space bar, and let's add another variable to it. Again, I'm going to click on that arrow and say Yamaha Avantage receiver, tuner, band. Added a second variable in there, VAR, VAR. And if you want to see which of those VARs, it'll show you. There's tuner frequency, there's the band. And you can change the text on any Boolean variable, so it can say AM or FM, or whatever you want it to say, megahertz, kilohertz, completely up to you. Go back to our window. Now it says 1500 AM, 92.5 AM. All right. Question in the chat window, is there a Control-Z limit? Is there an undo limit? I believe it's 30-step undo and redo before a save. So 30 steps should get you out of just about any jam that you get yourself into. Okay, so there's a lot of different ways to add text variables on here. And you'll notice as you browse through those drivers in that text entry field, you're going to see all kinds of different types of metadata that you can get in there. Okay, so let's go in and let's look at some other types of feedback that are available. You'll remember yesterday we looked at several different pages of images, graphics that we can add to our controller. Now a lot of these are simply buttons, things like that. Let's talk a little bit about some of the two-way graphics available in the images library. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my pull-down list here and let's just grab a page. Let's see. You know what? I'm just going to add a new page. From our template, let's just add a blank page. Easy enough to do. Okay, so I've added a plain blank page onto my controller. So now let's take a look in the images folder and see some of the graphics that are available in here. And again, we've scrolled through and we've seen all the channel icons, source icons, activity icons, lots of interesting things in there, but there's also some graphics in here specific to two-way control. First one I'm going to look at here is, let's go ahead and talk about a toggle button. So I'm going to go into the search window, type in what I'm looking for, T-O-G-G, and it drills down through the bitmap library showing me a couple of different toggle buttons on my screen. These are buttons that I can use not only to turn on and off a device or a lighting zone or whatever it happens to be, they'll give me some feedback. They'll slide back and forth between on or off. So you can see there's a couple of different options in here. You can just drag and drop them onto my screen. You can choose the one that you like. Of course, you can align them as always in Pro Control Studio. Go ahead and center them on my screen. So those are examples of two-way graphics. I'm going to show you how to implement these and get feedback onto these devices. But again, the point that I really want you to take from this is you can put them anywhere you want. We're never going to tell you, here's your feedback, here's what it looks like, here's where it goes. Absolutely up to you. You can put them where you want and put exactly the commands and the feedback that you want on there. All right, so those are toggle buttons. Let's take a look at another one. How about a slider? Sliders are a great feature that you can use with a volume level, lighting control, bass and treble, different things like that. Any driver that gives you that kind of information, and I'll show you how to place those commands and variables right on the button so you can get that direct feedback for subwoofer level, volume point, whatever you want to put on there. Last one I want to add on here is an example of a weather graphic. Start typing in until I find what I'm looking for down here at the bottom. Now these graphics are called image list graphics. When I drag and drop them onto a screen, it gives me a button like that shows me a small weather graphic. In this case, it's representative of a series of images. So we can go in, and when that's subscribed to our weather driver, for example, it can show us the sun, the moon, depending on if it's day or night. It can show us weather conditions like snow, rain, fog, wind, haze, whatever is on there. But they're very easy to program, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. In order to add these commands and variables to our button using our two-way drivers on our device, we're going to go into the properties section of our device. Now when we choose a type of graphic, I'm going to start with the toggle button down here on the bottom. I'm going to click on it to select it. Under properties, as I scroll to the bottom, you're going to see button variable bindings. This is how we tell a button, here's what I want you to do, and here's where I want you to get the feedback to be displayed. Question in the chat window, are there or will there be objects such as a camera viewer that can be dragged onto the remote or smart device? Not at this time. Remember, this is not Integration Designer. This isn't an RTI control system. It doesn't have the capabilities of that RTI control system, so you're not going to find a lot of the advanced programming features found in Integration Designer. Okay, so now we've gone to button variable bindings. This tells me how I can make this device work. Now we know this is called a toggle button, so I'm going to look for the toggle button object under the button variables. It says it's not set. So what do I want that toggle button to be flipping between on and off? Where do I want to get that feedback? I'm going to go ahead and click on it, and again, hit the arrow on the right-hand side to allow me to access all those drivers. So I'm going to go in, and I'll choose my Yamaha receiver in this case. Pops up. I'll go up to the main section, power. And it's as simple as that. Now I've bound that variable to this toggle button. When the Yamaha receiver is on, that switch says on. When it's off, it says off. That's all there is to it. It's a very, very simple process. All right. How about for actually controlling that device? We need to make it do something. So we can put a macro on that button. We'll go to the macro tab, and we'll add a command. I'm going to hit the green plus to add it. We'll go to our devices, find my Yamaha receiver, main, power. I'll go ahead and add that. And now I can choose a toggling command in the parameters for that driver command. Now when I press that button, it's going to turn that receiver on and off, and that switch is going to slide back and forth between on and off, demonstrating what's on there. So you can see it's a really simple process to add that kind of control and feedback to the devices. How about our slider? Now a slider is a great way to get tactile feedback from a device. I put my finger on it, I slide it up the screen, I slide it down the screen, and it raises and lowers my volume level. So let's do the same thing with that. First of all, we need to tell it, okay, where are you going to get the information to slide that bar up and down? We're going to go into properties once we've clicked on that button. So let's go in, and let's go to button variable bindings here at the bottom of button properties. Bar graph feedback. Where do I want to get that feedback from? We'll click on it, choose our right arrow, choose my Yamaha receiver, main volume. So I just choose exactly the variable that I want on there. Now that bar graph is going to slide up and down, demonstrating exactly where the volume is for my Yamaha receiver. Now, however, the bar graph, the slider in this case, is designed to do more than just slide up and down showing me where the volume is. I want my client to be able to put his finger on it, raise and lower the volume by sliding on it. It means we need to add a function to it or a command. So right under bar graph feedback here in the properties section of the button, bar graph function. It's currently not set. What do we want to put on there? Let's call our driver, Yamaha receiver, main volume. Now you have three options in here. Volume up and volume down are what you would put on buttons. Those are statically used commands. I press volume up, the volume goes up. Press volume down, volume goes down. Pretty basic stuff. You'll see a third command in here called volume set. Volume set is what we're going to apply to a slider like this, and now we're telling it volume set. When I slide my finger or touch a portion of that scale, I want to set the volume to that particular level. Easy, easy, easy. And that's what you need to remember. It's very simple, very basic, and you can customize or modify any of these pages with two-way feedback as long as you have a ProControl driver installed on your ProLink Z processor. Last graphic I want to go through here real quickly is this. And this again is called an image list. It's a weather condition graphic in this case. In order for it to get information so it can change between day or night and weather conditions that are out there, let's go in and let's put some command information on it, some variable information. So again, we'll go to Properties, and we've selected the button. At the bottom, under Button Variable Bindings, here's Image List. This is an image list type graphic, and it's going to dynamically show you the type of graphic you're working with. So I'm going to go in, and I'm going to say, okay, Image List. I want this to be my current weather conditions. What's it like outside? I'm going to go, and I'm going to find that weather driver, and I can do Current Conditions, any day of a 5-day forecast. I'm going to go to Current Conditions, and this is a condition graphic, obviously, so we'll go into the list and select Condition Graphic. It's as simple as that. It's really, really easy to do. And now this is going to change based on information that it's getting directly from the central control processors. Okay. Excuse my drink there real quickly. Some other types of variables that we can use in a ProControl device. I'm going to go to a page here. Let's go to this AM/FM radio page. Now on this AM/FM radio page, pretty simple, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, how to apply our presets, how to customize and modify the text that's been placed on there. So now, let's say that I want to know which preset that I'm on. How do I know that I'm on preset 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9? Maybe I want those buttons to press in. So I'm going to go ahead, choose a button, and we can apply button variables to these as well. So we're going to go to the properties of that button, and first thing I want to do is put a macro on there. I want to make sure that it has the command, preset number 1 on my Yamaha receiver. I'm going to hit the Add button. Find my device from the macro step section. There's my Yamaha receiver, tuner section, and we'll find our presets. See where they're located here. Preset select. Okay. What preset number do I want? I'll change the parameter to say 1. Piece of cake. Go ahead and close. So there's my command for preset number 1 placed on there. And I could do the remainder of those buttons the same way, preset 1 through 9. Just apply those to each button. Now when I press that button, I want that button to show me it's pressed in or it's reversed state when I'm on that. It means I need to add a variable. I need to add feedback to it, and we know that's available through button properties. I'm going to go to that properties section on the right-hand side of ProControl Studio, and again down to button variable bindings here at the bottom. You'll see you have 3 different states available with a button that has a normal and an active state. Pardon me. Reverse state means it shows me it's pressed in state. Inactive state means it stops responding to my button presses, and visible state means it appears or disappears based on feedback. In this case, I want to use the reverse state. I want that button to press in when I'm on preset number 1, or number 2, or number 3. Let's go ahead and add that binding in there. So reversed state, what do I want to set it to? We're going to click on it, choose our driver, Yamaha receiver, tuner, preset number 1. Very simple. So now when preset number 1 is selected, that button presses in and shows me its reversed state. So simple to do, easy to apply to all the buttons on the controller. Inactive state means we can lock out a button based on an application. So for example, you have a remote control. It's got two activity buttons on the front, watch TV, watch DVD. I can program this by using a system variable or using flags to say, okay, when I press watch TV, I want that button to become inactive. So if my customer presses watch TV and he's already watching TV, it's not going to run that macro again. I'm going to make it inactive. So all he can press is a different activity. Not going to screw up the system by running that macro again. So there's a lot of incredible functionality that you can add. It has a ton of the capabilities of the RTI control system, again, in this simple, inexpensive, easy to program environment. If you haven't already, I'd strongly encourage you to download the ProControl Studio Programming Guide that's got several different examples of using this feedback, these commands, these variables, and using them on the buttons of your ProControl system. Question in the chat window, is there a preview mode, an emulator like Integration Designer has? There is not. So no preview mode or emulator in ProControl Studio. Okay. So now we've looked at some simple ways to get feedback on there. Let's take a look at some more of the pre-programmed pages that are on here from our device. We looked at the RTI doc page. Shows me all that feedback, shows me the browsing list to add information on there. Let's take a look at some of the other ones on here. Weather. This is a great one. Again, all we did, we added the driver and we typed in our zip code. It's programmed, it's ready to go. And you can see this pre-programmed page shows me my location, current temperature, feels like temperature, a condition text, so chance of storms, shows me that weather condition graphic, humidity, wind speed, pressure, all that information is automatically populated in there. And if I go to the next screen of this device, you can see it shows me a dynamic 4-day forecast. Today, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Tomorrow it'll say today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So it shows me the next 4 days, including today, in succession. And again, all the work already done for you. The quick keys at the bottom to take us to our home page, our weather page, the next page, or the power off screen. It handles so much of that heavy lifting for you automatically, makes it an incredibly easy system to program, but as you can see, it retains all that customizability, all that flexibility, so you can truly customize this graphic to look any way that you want it to for your customer. Font, size, color, location, you name it. It'll do anything that you want it to do. All right. Let's take a look, moving on, at some macro examples here. Now, yesterday we talked about adding macro steps onto our controller. I'm just going to grab a random button here. It doesn't really matter which one it is. But I want to show you some specific examples of the various macro steps that have been placed on here. So I'm going to hit the Add button. And you'll remember yesterday we looked at that Add Macro Step window that allows me to add commands, page links, things like that onto our devices. So yesterday we looked at things like page link, the ability to flip to a specific page when that button is pressed. We have the plus sign. It shows me all the different pages that are on there. So I can simply go in and choose a page. My weather page, and you can see that it's been added onto my remote control. It's a very simple process. But there's a lot of other things that we can do on here as well. We also talked a little bit about time delay. It adds me to allow an adjustable pause between commands in my, in my macro, so if I need to warm up that TV before I choose an input, I can easily do that. But there's some other things in here that we didn't really cover. First one I want to talk a little bit about is toggle IR code. Toggle IR code allows us to toggle between any two IR codes that we drag in here. This is commonly used if you have a toggle bit device. Anybody remembers programming old Philips DVD players, for example, where you'd really have two separate code sets, code set A, code set B. You'd have the number 1A, the number 1B, and you'd have to alternate between those codes. If you sent power 1A, it would respond to it. You sent power 1A again, it ignored it. It was looking for power 1B. That's primarily what it was designed for. You're not seeing a lot of toggle bit pieces of equipment out there anymore, but there are other applications for it as well. So if I add that to my macro, you can see on my control processor it says toggle between the following two codes. So I can drag two IR codes in there, and it's going to alternate sending those codes on every button press. So maybe you have a device and all you have for it are discrete power on and power off commands, if only our problems were that big, but sometimes maybe we want a toggling power command. We can create one of those using this command. So let's go find a device that has a toggling power command, or discrete power commands. I'll go in and grab my, let's see here, got a receiver in here, and add a couple of commands. Let's see what I can find. How about, man, there's a lot of commands. Power on and power off. So I'll add power on, and I'll add power off. So now you can see they've shown up here in my macro. If I drag these two commands into this bracket, toggle between the following two codes, power on, power off. Means I press the button once, it turns it on. I press it again, it turns it off. So if you have an application where you need to put a toggling mute on there, for example, there are many devices where they'll give you a mute on and a mute off command. Sometimes that toggling mute is pretty nice, specifically when you have a hard button to do so. Now you can build a macro on there and alternate between any two commands in your programming. So that's an example of how you might use toggle IR command. Let's go look at some other ones in here. Get rid of my devices here. How about system variable test? This allows us to test any variable of a device. Is that TV on? Is it off? We can actually test it using the driver, either via TCP/IP or RS-232. So when I add that, I'm going to delete this toggling power command here. It says a variable not set as true, then blank. Else, blank. So we need to assign it to a variable first of all. So let's go in, and let's choose which variable we want to test. We're going to go down to the properties here in the bottom window. Which variable? And again, I'll just choose my Yamaha receiver, main, power. Now it's going to test that receiver, see if the power is on, and I can enlarge that window so you can see everything there. It says if the variable power is true on my Yamaha receiver, then do this. So what I could say is, okay, if the variable is true, if it's on, I just want to change inputs. So I'll go to my device, Yamaha receiver, inputs, main input. Once I choose the input, now I can adjust the parameters. Which input do I want it to turn to? I want it to go to HDMI 1. Now I can grab that and drag it right in there. So if the power's on, I want to switch to HDMI 1. I don't want to turn it on. I don't want to warm it up. Else, what if the power is not on the device? Means, okay, well, if it's not true, then I need to turn it on. Then I need to add a time delay. Then I need to choose that input. So let's do exactly that. Go to my Yamaha receiver, main power, main input, time delay. So I added those three commands. Now I'll just adjust their parameters. Okay, Yamaha receiver, main power on. So we're going to turn it on. I want it to pause. I don't need 7 seconds. Let's give it 2 seconds. Throw that in there, and then choose our input. And again, I think we're using HDMI 1 here, so let's use that again. So you can see what this gives me is a conditional statement, a logic statement. So it goes in and it says, okay, if the Yamaha receiver is on, go ahead and switch immediately to HDMI 1. But if it's not on, and it knows whether it is or isn't because it actually pulls that device, it goes over the network or it uses its RS-232 connection to say it's on, it's not on. If it's on, just switches inputs. But if it's not on, we're telling it, okay, well then I want you to turn it on. I want you to wait 2 seconds for the thing to light off, and then I want you to choose HDMI 1 as your input. So it really allows you to build some very powerful logic for testing these applications in here. And you can test any Boolean variable from any driver. By Boolean variable, I mean it's a true-false type variable. It's on, it's off. Is it on this input? Is it not on this input? So now it makes it real simple for you to do some very complex programming, speeding up your macros, truly turning it into a very intelligent control system. Okay, let's look at some other commands that are in here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this so we have a clean slate to work with. How about beep? Beep simply allows me to make that system default sound and place it into my macro. So I press a button and I can have it make a sound when that button is pressed in addition to the default button beep sound that's on there. Comment. Comment allows me to enter text in my macro. Do I want to make a note? What is this time delay being used for? What input am I doing? Any notes that you want to put in there, you can simply type into the value. And now you can see that line of comment has been added in there. Now keep in mind these comments do not add, excuse me, they do not add any time delays, they don't use up any appreciable memory, and you can write as much information as you'd like to. So if you want to put in a paragraph or a novel, doesn't matter, as much information as you'd like to put in there. That's what the comment is used for. Repeat steps. Now repeat steps is a nice feature, and you have a couple of different options with the repeat steps function. What it means is it'll run any commands that you place in this bottom bracket for 2 different options until the button is released or for a certain number of times. And you can choose that parameter down here at the bottom, until button is released or for a number of times. I want to run something 4 times, I can use that, or I can simply put until button is released. This is something that you might want to use if you have a lower end or an older AV receiver. A lot of times you might not have sustaining IR commands for those devices, and I'm sure you all understand what I mean by that. that you press the button once and it raises the volume one step or one level, whatever it is. Press it again and hold it, and it still just goes up one step. It doesn't sustain. It doesn't ramp up that volume. It doesn't ramp down that volume. So this is a way to work around that, because my customer doesn't want to sit there and press the button 25 times to get that volume to their appropriate level. We can use this feature, repeat steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to choose a command. Let's grab a IR command from our receiver here. I'll just look for a volume up type command. Volume up. Go ahead and add that and drag it into that bottom bracket. It says repeat until button is released, volume up. So I press and hold that volume up button. Guess what happens? The processor is telling the receiver, volume up, volume up, volume up, volume up, volume up. So now I can go through and I can have it ramp that up while my customer holds the button down instead of repeatedly pressing that button to adjust the volume to a specific level. All right, let's delete that one. Button pause. Button pause is a nice feature that you can use in some particular applications. Button pause simply gives us a command that says pause until the button is released. And what that means is I can put commands before that and after that in my macro. And it's going to stop at this button pause command until that button is released. So for example, maybe you want to use it with a relay. I press and hold the button, it closes the relay, it starts that projector lift going. Projector comes up. As soon as I release it, I can have it run the next command in my macro, a stop command. I've used this command frequently with DVRs and TiVos. I'll show you an easy way to make a nice thing. Most of you have used DVRs, TiVos before, and one of the things that's nice about them is you can fast forward, you can blast through those commercials. And every time you press the fast forward button, it ramps up the level. Hit it 1, it's 2x speed. Hit it again, 4x speed. Hit it again, 8x speed. And I like to hit that button, I like to burn through those commercials. So maybe this is something I want to put on a fast forward button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some commands for that device. What I'm going to do is find my devices here, find my cable box. Let's see what I got here. We must have a fast forward button here. Forward. Okay, there we go. Forward, forward, forward. Got these 3 commands. What I'm going to do is I'll make those the first 3 commands in my macro. So when I press and hold that button, fast forward, it's going to send 3 commands. Forward ramps it up to 2x speed. Forward ramps it up to 4x speed. Forward ramps it up to 8x speed. Pause until button is released. So I press and hold that button, and it pauses after those 3 steps. It's blazing through those commercials or through that show that I don't want to watch. Now, pause until button is released. When I release it, it's going to continue running whatever commands I put in that macro. So maybe I throw a play command after that. Press and hold it, forward, forward, forward. Stop until that button is released. When that button is released, send the remaining commands in that macro. So that's an example of using button pause for some control that's in there. All right, let's get rid of these commands again. Another nice thing about ProControl processors is they have a voltage sensing input built into these. Now, voltage sensing is a really powerful tool because eventually you're going to run into one of those toggling power devices. So let's say we have an example of a toggling power device. I've got one in here. I've got a projector. Now here its case is a Toshiba projector, and you'll notice that all I have is a power toggle command. I don't have those discrete on and discrete off commands. These are kind of the enemy of a reliable control system, right? It means every time I run that macro, it's going to get out of sync. So how do we deal with a toggling power command? If the device you're working with has provisions for putting out voltage when it's on and no voltage when it's off, like a projector, it has a 12-volt trigger to drop a screen, or a cable box that has a switched AC power outlet on the back, we can take and monitor that voltage so we know whether or not that device is on. And to do that, we're going to use the built-in sensing in our ProLink Z processor. The command we're going to use to do that, obviously, is going to be called PowerSense. When I add the PowerSense command to it, it gives us this conditional statement. It says if port 1, voltage sensing port number 1, is off or not seeing voltage, then blank. But if it is seeing voltage, then blank. And you can change that condition around. I don't want on, I want to use off. I can change that downstairs in the parameters, and I can also switch which port that I want to monitor. Do I want to look at port 1 or port number 2? So those are your configuration properties for it. So I've got this projector. So our macro is going to read like this. If port number 1 is on, if I'm seeing voltage from the 12-volt trigger of that projector, that means it's on. So if it's on, what do I want to do? Nothing. I'm going to leave it alone. If that projector's on, it's good. But if it's not on, I want to send that toggling power command to the device. That's going to turn it on because the toggling power command, as you all know, inverts its current state of power. If it's off, it turns it on. If it's on, it turns it off. So it's a powerful tool for getting control of these devices that only feature toggling power commands. If the device is on, go ahead and leave it on. And I know it's on because I'm monitoring it. I can check. I can physically pull that sensor, query it to know, hey, this device is on. But if it's not on, else, then I can send the power command and turn the device on. So it can give you reliable control of some of those toggling power devices that are available on the market. We all know them. We all love them. This is a way to get reliable control of those devices. All right. So a lot of different macro steps that you can use to build some very sophisticated automation routines, some simplifying and automating control for your customer. That's really what the device is all about. So you can see that you have a lot of customizability, a lot of flexibility. Flexibilizability, is that really a word? You have a lot of ability to customize these things as necessary for your clients, but remember, the programming is so incredibly fast, and it's very, very easy. This is going to save you a ton of time, which also, but of course, by and large, makes it a very profitable line for you. All right, so now I want to talk to you a little bit about IR learning. We had a lot of questions yesterday about learning IR commands into Pro Control Studio. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can do it, and I'm going to demonstrate these for you. I'm going to go to my devices section. When I go to our devices section, one of the most common questions that I received yesterday and already today is, hey, I'm already an RTI dealer. Can I use my RTI IR Pro, my capture kit, to learn IR commands into Pro Control Studio? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can, and it's a wonderful way to do it. The RTI IR Pro is an incredibly powerful device. It's robust, it's powerful, you've already got it. It's truly the best way to capture IR commands, period. There's nothing better out there. But furthermore, the Pro Control remote controls, the Pro 24R and the Pro 24Z, have IR learning commands built, or ability built into those. And the nice thing about it, it's done exactly the same way. So it doesn't matter if you're using the remote control or you're using your IR Pro, done exactly the same way, and I'm going to demonstrate that for you. So it doesn't matter which method you want to use. Furthermore, if you've already learned IR commands in Integration Designer, you've learned them into a library, you can access those CML libraries directly from Pro Control Studio, just like you would in Integration Designer. All right, so let's add and learn some IR commands to our system. So in this case, I have my Pro Control remote, my Pro 24Z, plugged into my laptop via the programming cable that came with the device. Plug it in and set it up. Now to start learning those commands, we're going to go to the controlled device section. Here we can see the add button, to add a new controlled device, delete a controlled device, and a libraries section. The libraries are where we can add those IR commands. So when I click on libraries, you'll see you have two different library managers available. The IR library manager, the serial library manager. We're going to deal with the IR library manager today. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. And you'll notice that the IR Library Manager is not part of Pro Control Studio. It's a separate program, a separate application that allows me to go in and build a new library to learn my commands in. We can't learn codes into the built-in infrared libraries in Pro Control Studio because every time we release a new version, it's going to have more codes. It's going to overwrite the old library. So if you'd learned any codes into that library, boom, they're gone. So what we're going to do is go ahead and create a new library. In the IR Library Manager, I'm going to go up to the File section and choose New. This allows me to create my own command library. So if I want to build one for a specific customer or just have my own name, I'll just call this one Clint's IR Codes. Hit Save. Now I've created a brand new library that I can start learning my commands into. Now that I've built the library, let's add the remote that I want to learn. I've got a LG Blu-ray player sitting here. So what I'm going to do, oh, you guys can't see it. I'm going to bring it up. I'm sorry, guys. There we go. Everybody should be able to see it now. Okay, so here's my IR Library Manager. And again, the steps that I went through to create my new library were File, New, and it prompted me to name that. This time I'm going to call it Matt's IR Codes. Hit Save, and there's my new library. So I built that. CML is the suffix, just like an Integration Designer, just like an RTI control system. Next step, Let's add that Blu-ray player remote control that I'm trying to learn. Maybe it's something that I couldn't find in there. The LG Blu-ray player is obviously in our database, but let's say it's any device. Doesn't matter. We're going to go to Remote at the top of the IR Library Manager. Remote, New. It's going to pop up a window that says, okay, create new remote. Who's the manufacturer? This is an LG. What type of device is it? It's a DVD player. What's the model? A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to fill out all that information right in there. Hit OK. Now if you look on the left-hand side of the IR Library Manager, you can see it has a Windows tree essentially that shows me drilling down from my library by manufacturer, type of device, model number of device. And it also tells me that the blue bar at the top of the IR Library Manager. It's an LG branded device, it's a DVD player, and here's the model number for it. You'll also see 5 tabs at the bottom of the IR Library Manager. We're on the Edit tab right now, and that's where you're going to want to start. So in the Edit tab, the first thing we need to do is add the functions that I need to learn from this remote control. Play, pause, cursor, up, down, left, right, enter. I need to add those functions. There's 2 different ways you can do it. You can use the New Function Wizard. When I click on this button, it's going to check and see if it knows what type of device I entered in. I entered in a DVD player. So it says, okay, well, you've got a DVD player. Here's the commonly used functions for a DVD player, and you can see those are all in there. Great. I can check or uncheck the ones that I want to add. It automatically checks the one I want. Maybe I don't have that 10 plus button on there. Maybe I have something different. Maybe I have discrete on and off buttons, and I don't have a power toggle. So you can really adapt what's in there. Hit OK, and you can see it populates all of those commands or those functions. I'm going to size this up a little bit so you can see it better. It populates all those functions into the first column. Function. If there is something that's not in there that you'd like to add that didn't show up in the wizard, you can also add it manually. Or if it doesn't recognize the type of device, we can go into the Add Functions section, and I can type in what I'm looking for. Hit Add, and you can see that it places in the list in alphabetical order. So that's your first step. Enter in the commands that you want to learn, whether they're all the commands on the remote control or you're just trying to learn input selection and power from a device. It's completely up to you. Okay, next step. After I've entered in all my functions, on these 5 tabs at the bottom, let's go to the Capture tab. The first step is we need to align the remote that we're trying to learn with our learning device, whether it's an RTI IR Pro, whether it's a Pro Control remote control. And to align it, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the donor remote control, the one I'm trying to learn those commands from, I'm going to point it at the top of my Pro Control remote or at my RTI IR Pro, and I'm going to press and hold any button. The key is hold it. As you're pressing and holding it, it's going to show you on the display of the Pro Control remote control and in the IR Library Manager that it's receiving a signal in big red letters here. It's also going to show you a frequency. That's the carrier frequency of the IR codes of the device that we're trying to learn. Once it's captured that information, it shows me that frequency. You can go ahead and let go of that button. Signal light goes out, and you can see that the carrier frequency has been captured, 38 kilohertz, pretty common for most consumer electronics devices. Once I've aligned my donor remote control to my learning device, again an IR Pro or a Pro Control remote control, the next step is to learn. When I hit the Learn button, now we're just going to follow the instructions on the screen. Press and hold the angle button on the source remote control. I'm going to do that pointing it at my IR Pro or pointing at my Pro Control remote control. Press and hold, and that's the key. I'm going to hold it. Press and hold until it tells me it's learned that command. It tells me it's learned the command by giving me a chiming sound through the speakers of my computer, and you'll look at the command up here. There's a red dot on it. That command's been learned. Carrier frequency, repeats, sustain box is checked. If I see that, that means, okay, it's learned that command properly. Now it says press and hold the audio button. So I'm going to press the audio button, hold it, and point it at my device. Now it's learned that command. Press and hold the cancel button. It's learned that command. So very quickly, I just go through and press and hold each of the buttons on this remote control, and it learns those commands in. Now, you can also learn a command simply by pressing that button. Now, in this case, cursor down, I didn't press and hold it. I just pressed it. And you'll see cursor down has the same carrier frequency, but it has 0 repeats, and the sustain box isn't checked. So now, it looks a lot different than the other commands. Chances are pretty good I didn't do this properly. So if I want to relearn a command, I can just go highlight that command and follow the instructions again. This time I'm going to press and hold it and see what happens. Pressing and holding cursor down, it relearned it, and now you can see it's got 1 repeat, the sustain box is checked. That command's been learned properly. So now it's very simple. Go in and learn all the commands off of that remote control that you'd like to use. Once you've learned a command, you'll see a couple other tabs down here at the bottom, Waveform View and Hex View. When I click on Waveform View, it shows me the waveform in its entirety, all the NEC encryption data. I can scroll through and I can see the command beginning to end. It's all right there. We can also look at Hex View, and it shows me the learned uncompressed hex for that particular IR code. Now, I had a number of questions. Hey, I've got hex data. Maybe it's from another control system software. Maybe I got it from a document from the manufacturer. How can I use that hex information and put it into ProControl Studio? It's real simple. Let's say we've got some hex. I'll just copy this. Now, a key to this, it has to be learned format hex, uncompressed hex. And you'll know that because it begins with 4 zeros. If your IR hex data begins with 4 zeros, that means it's an uncompressed version. If you see 0500, 0600, that's a compressed hex. That's a Pronto hex or an RC5 or an RC6. You can't paste that into ProControl Studio. But if I have it in this format, 4 zeros beginning, I can just copy that information onto a clipboard, go into the IR Library Manager, and I can paste it in this hex view window. Right-click, paste, and then I'm going to hit the Apply button in here. And now you can see it's applied all that information in there. 38 kilohertz, 1 repeat, sustain box is checked. So it's real simple to apply your hex directly into the RTI, or excuse me, the ProControl IR Library Manager. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of this now. I'm going to bring ProControl Studio back up, so bear with me a moment here. Now that I've learned all of these commands into ProControl Studio, how do I use those commands that I've learned? We're going to go in and we're going to hit Add Infrared Device. Now remember, before we were learning from the master library. Up here at the top it says IR Library Source, ProControl IR codes, User IR codes. I'm going to choose User IR codes, and it'll show me all of those codes that I've learned in there. I can grab the device, ask me if I want to create a new page for it, DVD player in this case, hit OK, and now I've added that device. This is just a sample that I threw in there, but it's that simple. Now we've got all those learned devices, those commands, and it'll even attempt to auto-populate a page if it recognizes the name of the commands. So it's real simple, and again, you can learn those IR codes using the RTI IR Pro or the ProControl Remote Control. All right, so I've used up my allotted time here. I'm going to shut off the recording. I'll stay on and answer any questions that you might have, but thank you very much for attending. This is part 2 of ProControl Studio training. My name is Clint Forberg, Director of Training for ProControl, joined by Matt Sundberg, ProControl Technical Specialist, answering your questions online. And again, thank you. We're recording this. It'll be posted on our website tomorrow, and I'm going to stay on and answer any questions you might have. Thank you again, and have a great night, everybody.